So picture this, 90s Capcom and 90s Squaresoft decide to make a baby. That baby is Parasite Eve 2. And I'll explain why. I know you guys are going to be like, when do you cover new survival horror games? Well, new survival horror games, they just don't hit the same. It's kind of like gaming in general nowadays. I might sound like a bit of a boomer when it comes to gaming, but when these games came out, they were literally just, they had to be good when the disc was shipped, otherwise you couldn't literally take back 50,000 discs, or, you know, I'm being pedantic, but you just had to get it right. So older survival horror games are just better. New ones can just... Parasite Eve 2 is a perfect mix between survival horror and RPG. So essentially, if you take the older Final Fantasy systems and put them with Resident Evil, the original trilogy to be exact, Parasite Eve 2 is what you get. So for example, you have spells, which can do things like make your guns more powerful, make you take less damage, literally shoot fireballs out of your hand, and heal yourself. And then you have the mechanics, which are very similar to Resident Evil, which is the gunplay. It plays very, very similar to it. You have to stop and shoot, you can't actually move and shoot at the same time. The RPG elements of the game are pretty decent. The fact that you can actually build a certain build. So for example, you can get armor pieces and they have certain stats and they can do things like stop you getting paralyzed, or you can auto heal after every battle and things like that. It means you can cater your playstyle around a certain way, which is really interesting. Also, there's a lot of 90s jankiness in it as well. The AI are kind of funny too. The design of the creatures is kind of comical. For example, the cows in the background, I call them cows. They're not technically cows, but they kind of act like cows, and their faces are just really, really funny, and it makes me laugh every time I see them. What the fuck is that? It's a giant cow bastard. He's even weirder because he's got a grey beard. He's got fucking Pringle neck. Holy shit. I've got Pringle neck. There are so many different ways to play the game. For example, every time I played it when I was younger, I would always pick the M4 because it was highly customizable and it was just the easiest to use. But this playthrough, I decided to go completely against the grain of what I normally do, and I would run the PA3 shotgun. It's basically like a shortened down M870 shotgun. It only has 3 rounds in it, and it takes ages to reload. That just made it a really, really fun playthrough, and it was just different to what I'd done before, so I had to play totally out of my element because you have to move around a lot more and not rely on having a higher capacity, longer range weapon. Okay, so the good thing about this... Okay, it's not that good. The post is there, bitch. Don't talk to me like that, bitch. Oh, you missed, little fucker. Ow! What are you doing? Don't you know who I am?
You know who I am? You're a care.
Their weapon selection is huge as well compared to other games. Such as Resident Evil 1, for example, literally has 4 to 5 weapons. This has probably about 20 to 25, which is awesome. I definitely feel Parasite Eve 2 was a game at the time that got overlooked due to the popularity of Resident Evil and the Silent Hill games. It was definitely a game I'd not really heard of until my cousin decided to come over and he brought the game with him. We used to play a lot of the Resident Evil games when we were younger, and this just was a bit surprising that I'd never seen or heard of it before until then. It's definitely survival horror fundamentally at its roots. Like I've mentioned quite a bit before, it just has RPG elements. One thing I think Parasite Eve 2 does probably better than Resident Evil is the boss fights in the earlier games. Yeah, you have some iconic bosses like Gravedigger from Resident Evil 3 and Mr. X from Resident Evil 2, but a lot of the monsters are a little bit more diverse in Parasite Eve. You've got the burner boss, which you have to play it a certain way, otherwise it determines the outcome of part of the game after. So basically, if you play that boss fight wrong, a certain character gets killed and then it affects an item you get, and it also affects your ending. Then you have the trash monster as well. That's probably one of my favorite boss fights. Essentially, you're in a small crowded area with him, and he has a range of skills that he can use to try and stop you. He then tries to literally breathe you in and kill you. And then you have to play the fight a certain way, because he knocks other enemies in, and he can also breathe them in and gain health again. So you have to switch between him and killing the additionals as well. And it's just a really cool fight in general. Another thing that interests me about Parasite Eve 2 is the dialogue and the dialogue choices. So it's got a really good written story, and the dialogue is great. However, it's kind of got this weird hybrid. So it's around the time that survival horror games were fully voice acted, such as the Resident Evil and Silent Hill games. However, it kind of only has literally a few voice acted lines. There's a couple of screams and things, and like 1 or 2 words, but then it kind of uses the Final Fantasy old school dialogue boxes instead. It's kind of odd, but it's its own style. I think it works pretty well in this game. However, it would have been cool to see the whole game voice acted, but the first one isn't voice acted at all. Basically, if you've never played it before and you're looking for something that's a little bit different but still on the same lines as old school survival horror, I think Parasite Eve 2 is for you. Also, go and check out the first one as well. I am going to do a video on that, but bear in mind, like I said, I didn't play it for years and years after. It was mainly because it just wasn't a very popular and easy to get game in the UK at the time. That's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed my little attempted funny on Parasite Eve 2. Basically, it's just a great game that was really overlooked in my opinion, and I think you should all go and play it if you like survival horror. This has been Simmers Dim Gaming, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.